Have UFOs crashed on Earth? Have we made alien contact? Is the US government covering up a massive UFO conspiracy? Behind me is one of the most secret military bases in the world, deep in the heart of the Nevada desert. The Groom Lake test site, also known as Area 51 or Dreamland, has been home to US stealth projects since the Second World War. However, in recent years, a more disturbing story has emerged, and that is that the government is back engineering recovered alien spacecraft. Tonight, based on evidence given to us by top military personnel, engineers and scientists, we can exclusively reveal the UFO technology that's being developed behind me. It's a story the US government has tried to cover up for half a century. The truth behind Dreamland.
I am convinced, based on my research and the individuals whom I've had contact in the US intelligence community, that the US government does indeed have craft that meet the description of many of the UFO reports.
The whole aim of the project was to take these craft, or the one in particular that I was working on, and try and duplicate its systems and subsystems with earthly materials.
I'm convinced beyond doubt that we have recovered aircraft, alien vehicles, that we have made contact with aliens, that we are communicating with them in some way or form, and that we have vehicles and bodies in preservation.
I was at that moment standing on the deck of the radar van. It was nighttime, and I was looking up in the sky because there were saucers up there.
Were there any alien bodies recovered?
No bodies. There were 4 live, feeling good guys.
4 live extraterrestrials?
4 live, feeling good extraterrestrial type individuals, yes.
They are here, whoever they are, wherever they came from, whatever they're doing. Other intelligences are messing around on our planet.
I think that too many people's butts are on the line with this, that they lied to us too long, that a lot of people have stolen legitimate national security money to keep this cover-up going, that they have perpetuated disinformation schemes on the American public, probably on the British public.
The Air Force knows that there was a crash saucer, there were alien bodies recovered, that there have been aircraft that have gone up to chase UFOs and have not come back. They know that we're dealing with the biggest story of the millennium.
Set on a remote dry lake bed 80 miles outside Las Vegas, Area 51 is just one part of the massive Nellis Air Force Base, which is roughly the same size as Switzerland. It was commissioned by President Truman in the 1950s as a top-secret location to develop and test America's new generation of post-war aircraft. In the technology fever of the 1950s, the base soon became home to the most exotic flying craft of its day. More recently, it is where the F-117 stealth aircraft was developed and test flown.
This is an area that has been known but officially denied for many decades. We go back quite a ways into the 40s and 50s with the development of the U-2 spy plane, the SR-71. All of our super secret aircraft have been developed and test flown out in this particular area.
The A-12 from its inception through its retirement was operated out of only 2 locations. Area 51 at Groom Lake was its original home. The first aircraft was delivered there in January of '62, and the last airplane left on June 21st, 1968.
The US Air Force denies that Area 51 exists, despite footage of the base and Russian satellite photos that we have obtained, which clearly show hangars and a huge runway stretching across the lake bed. In the face of constant denials of its existence, the base has expanded since the 50s, with several passenger jets now landing every day, carrying hundreds of workers to the base. With this level of personnel, the few buildings that can be observed above the ground are merely the cover for a large underground facility. Security at the base is unprecedented and secrecy is paramount. Since the late 50s, the military has sequestered hundreds of thousands of acres of land that adjoin the base. The exclusion zone around Area 51 now stretches to 26 miles.
The secret status of the base is very, very well preserved. And even if people are talking about the operation of the U-2s back in the 1950s, 40 years ago, they're still not allowed to identify the base by name or by location. All they can say is it is a remote facility.
This place is an old anachronism from the Cold War. This is a place that harkens back to the old days, and because the military is continuing to treat it as a top secret facility that doesn't exist, it attracts attention. Naturally, everyone wants to know what goes on here.
There is no question that the facility is there, that the government has said very little in the past about it, that it has the right to test things like the U-2, like the SR-71, like the stealth aircraft. People forget the stealth aircraft, over $10 million spent on developing it, and more than a decade before its existence was even announced. That's what you do out at Groom Lake. Now, the real question, I suppose, is, are there any flying saucers out there?
We took to the skies to see the base for ourselves. Flying at an altitude of 10,000 feet, we edged to within 1 mile of the restricted zone. Having made contact with the tower, we soon found out how seriously Area 51 guards its airspace.
Remain on the 4375, good off right, pick you back up in a few miles. We're just curious, is there any activity today out at the Groom Lake area? Any activity where, sir? Out at the Groom Lake area. Lake Mead 60, I don't have any of that information available. Dude, L control on guard. When working Reveille Mola squawk altitude, acknowledge with an IDID. The Nellis approach controller now is just getting a little concerned that we're getting close now.
We've just been buzzed by 2 F-16 fighters. They passed our bow at about 800 to 1,000 miles an hour. These guys aren't messing around. They don't want us to be here. In fact, there's another one just gone by the bow there. They're either trying to get us out of the area quickly or force us to land. And there goes another one.
Well, that was really close, right off the right side. I'd say that was within a mile and a half. Well, you can see them, boy, that was amazing. And they have TCAS on board, so they definitely had radar contact with us. That was really close.
In 1989, one man blew the lid off Dreamland. His name was Bob Lazar, and he claimed to have worked at the Groom Lake site, back engineering recovered alien spacecraft.
The base is against the side of a mountain, or small mountain, big hill. There are 9 hangar doors, and the hangar doors are not just shiny metal out in the desert. They are painted or sprayed with a sand texture to them, and from what I can ascertain, to prevent satellites from photographing the installation, so they look like the mountain range. It was pretty effective from what I could see. On the first occasion when I drove out there, all the hangar doors were closed, but at close range you could tell that they were doors and they would open. We drove around the left side of the installation, and there was the main entrance in there, and went through some gates and a security check and went inside, and it seemed like a typical government building. The work that I did basically entailed back engineering the power and propulsion system, and I opted to start with the power, the reactor that ran the craft. With the clearance that I had, that was known as Majestic clearance, there were only 22 people at S4 with that clearance to work on the craft.
The location he worked on at Area 51 was called S4 and was housed on Papoose Dry Lake Bed, a short drive from Groom Lake.
When I was brought in by bus, normally we had gone around to the left side of the installation and entered the door there. And for the first time, one of the hangar doors, the one on the end, was open. The bus drove up and we stopped there, and clear as day in the hangar, taking up almost all the hangar, was the disc. Looked like something right out of a science fiction movie. And we stopped, got out, and for the first time I was let in through that door. And as I walked in there, I thought, well, this is the new advanced aircraft we've been working on, and this is why people keep seeing flying saucers, because it's ours and we've just been testing it probably for all these years. And when I walked alongside it, I ran my hand on it. I say it's metal because it was cold, so I just assume it was some sort of metal. And in fact, by the hatch that was taken off, there was an opening there, and it had a little backwards American flag stuck on it. So I was positive it was something we had manufactured. I was allowed in the craft on one occasion to see the placement of these systems in case it was important to their operation. So I was, of course, escorted in the craft, and it was obviously made to be piloted by something smaller than the average human being. Very cramped in there. There was a sub-level where a little collapsing floor member opened, and I could stick my head and upper torso down underneath with a flashlight to see how the gravity amplifiers hung upside down. Looked around the placement of the 3 seats, about 1/3 to 1/4 the size of a normal human seat. At one point when I was in the craft, one of the archways became transparent. There were some technicians working on something else that I had no knowledge of. So, and also something began to scroll up on the screen. So it might have been possible that the skin of the craft, whether under, electrical influence or something else, could at times become either transparent to look outside, or be used as some sort of video screen. That was pretty amazing. When I went outside and looked at it, it looked as if it was just a plain piece of metal again. A lot of people say, boy, it must have been exciting to go in there, and I always say it wasn't. It was a very ominous feeling. You really had because it's so, I know it sounds silly, but it's so unearthly in there. Nothing had a sharp edge to it. It was if the seats, the amplifiers that were in there, everything, as if it was made out of wax and heated for just a little bit and then cooled off. Everything had a smooth curve to it, even where a chair met the floor was blended into it. It was if the entire craft was injection molded.
No one, let alone Bob Lazar, have been able to verify any of his academic or professional credentials. In 1990, he was convicted of pandering and declared bankrupt. In court, he simply described his occupation as a self-employed photo processor. Is Lazar a fraud? Did he work at S4? Or was he set up by the military to release certain information about the base?
The notion that he would make a great patsy and he's the perfect scientist to work on such a project is interesting science fiction. In the first place, we have no reason to say he's a scientist. No diplomas, no papers, no memberships, nothing. In the second place, I worked on security for 14 years. People take security far more seriously than that. One of the strange statements he's made, there are only 22 people working on this thing. Well, you get more than that working on devising a new mousetrap for the government anyway. That makes no sense. And, it has all the trimmings, his story, of a Walter Mitty story. Somebody in his imagination was, you know, stronger, brighter, faster than anybody else.
I did a variety of research relative to Bob Lazar. I actually met him. I obtained a copy of his, what they call a W-2 form, which is one of the IRS documents associated with pay. His particular form indicated that he worked for the U.S. Department of Naval Intelligence. My investigation of this document and the claims that Bob Lazar made followed a very strict path of sound research. I contacted the U.S. Department of Naval Intelligence and indeed verified that they were likely responsible for presenting that W-2. I investigated the issue with the Internal Revenue Service. They informed me the exact words were, it appears to be legit, that it was a genuine document. It was not something that had been fabricated. There were a variety of numbers, contract numbers and so forth, issued on the document, which I was able to research, again finding that these were highly classified numbers. In fact, Internal Revenue Service ran into a brick wall when it came to trying to track down the actual employer associated with the document.
He gave me information about his background, educational background and employment background. I started with his claim to have worked at Los Alamos Lab. I figured, well, that's a good starting point. If he worked at Los Alamos, it's pretty likely that he had an education somewhere. They don't just hire people off the street. And if he worked at Los Alamos, especially on classified projects, it's at least reasonable to assume he could have been hired somewhere else in Nevada to work on similar projects. We went to Los Alamos and got nothing even close to cooperation. They wouldn't respond to our phone calls. They say, we have no information on Bob Lazar. There's nothing in the files. I said, are you sure now? No, nothing in the files. I showed them the phone book entry that Bob had kept that said he was there. I showed him the newspaper article that showed that he was there. Are you certain that you don't have a Bob Lazar? Well, maybe we had a Bob Lazar. Here's an ID number, but he didn't work for us. He worked for someone else. Basically, Los Alamos Lab tried to thwart me at every step. Were completely uncooperative in trying to get information about Bob, and I found that to be the case at every step of the way in trying to verify his background.
I'm the one that couldn't find any records or anything. I mean, I'm the one that brought that up, because I was the first one to run into that. Initially, I couldn't get a hold of my birth certificate either, and that was one of the things that concerned me, is they might be trying to make me essentially a non-person.
I think it's most likely that Bob Lazar was indeed set up to be the conduit for certain information relating to this extraterrestrial project.
On one occasion in the desert, Bob Lazar saw a flying disc being tested.
I was brought into the hangar for one of the short duration tests, and the craft was already outside on the lake bed and lifted off silently and was drifted around for a bit and set back down, and that was pretty much of a marvelous sight. It's a huge thing. It's like seeing a house lift off the ground quietly. It's just, you can't imagine the energy involved to do that and not to make any noise at all. There was some audio communication with the craft, and so I can only assume that there were humans on board, and somehow they had managed to squeeze themselves into those little seats or put something in there to sit on, and obviously they knew how to operate whatever controls there was, or fabricate their own, or retrofit it with something.
The Apollo space missions of the 1960s stirred America into space fever. But as the country's finest astronauts hurtled skywards in conventional rockets, did the president know of the existence of sources and propulsion systems that were literally out of this world? Dr. Edgar Mitchell of the Apollo 14 mission and the sixth man to walk on the moon has carried out extensive investigations of the alleged saucer crashes, as well as the question of alien contact. He met Lazar in 1991.
I tend to believe that his basic story is true, that he was to expose to what he thought were alien craft and attempts to engineer and back engineer. I think that his explanation of what's going on and his theory that he's utilizing is probably not on target. What I think is credible is the fact that he was there. Since the Roswell incident in 1947, that there was a cover-up, that was a valid incident, and that there has been an active investigation program, reverse engineering program, and cover-up associated with that since that time.
After working at S4 for several months and in clear violation of his top-secret clearance, Bob Lazar decided to tell his closest friend, Gene Huff, about his work at the base.
My reaction was to, without pressing him against his will, find out more, get him to tell me anything I could. And it wasn't disbelief. I think I was actually motivated to further read. I started investigating other books on UFOs and other researchers' information to see if anyone knew anything, and needless to say, they didn't know what Bob knew.
1 month later, in March 1989, Bob Lazar went one step further. He decided to take his friends to the desert and show them a flying disc test.
I had remembered most of the days and times of testing. So I believe it was 8 or 9 o'clock on a Wednesday night, somewhere in March '89, I believe. We went out with Gene Huff, my ex-wife, and John Lear. Shortly after the flight time that I had recorded, white light came up off the ground and hovered, and then began doing radical step maneuvers and darting from one side of the sky to the other, doing some impossible flight characteristics. But at times the craft had glowed tremendously bright, where we thought, being miles and miles away, we thought there was something wrong and the craft was going to explode, so much so that we all got behind the car.
It actually came closer. It came down the mountain range toward us to where we could actually see it was elliptically shaped. It looked like something that, it's strange to explain. It looks like an explosion that starts to explode and stops and doesn't explode and dissipate. That's how bright the light is. Your brain interprets it as an explosion about to happen.
On his third visit with his friends to observe the discs at night, Bob Lazar was arrested. He was taken to an unknown location for interrogation and never returned to Area 51.
They threatened my wife. They threatened to kill my wife. They said they'd stop at nothing. They said they thought they made that very clear. They couldn't believe that I had taken anyone out there to show them that, much less left with information like the flight test data, and wanted to know what else I had said, who else I had told specifically.
Security agents from the OFI, the Office of Federal Investigation, had been witnessed doing random security checks at his house. There was almost no question in anyone's mind, anyone in Bob's immediate life who talked with him on the telephone, that his phone was tapped. I mean, strange things would happen on Bob's phone and really continue to this day.
Dennis Mariani, who was my supervisor, called, and all he said was, "Do you have any idea what we're going to do to you now?" And that was the end of the phone call. They were crazy. They really were. They were completely out of control.
When you go to work out at those locations, you sign away your constitutional rights. You sign a piece of paper saying that if you violate your security agreement and you discuss programs that you're working on without a trial, without right of appeal, you're going to go to Leavenworth Federal Penitentiary for 20 years. That's a real big incentive to keep your mouth shut.
We had an engineer who worked at this TV station who, before he was here, had worked at Area 51 and had seen one of these craft under a tarp. Walked into a place he probably shouldn't have been. I arranged to do an interview with him. He lives in another city, in another state. He agreed reluctantly as long as I would block out his face. Well, we make the arrangements on the phone. The interview is supposed to happen the next day. He gets up, goes to work. There are two men in a car outside of his house talking into a radio. They follow him to work. When he gets out of work, they follow him home. No interview. I mean, it happened again and again and again. Same scenario.
It has been very difficult to talk about this. It's almost like every time I relate the story, it gets a little easier. But when I first started talking about it, it was like my mouth didn't even want to form the words, and the sound didn't even want to come out of my throat. So I can only guess from that there was a very strong suggestion given to me not to talk about this, not to remember it, and if I did remember it, not to ever talk about it to anyone.
This man is a 71-year-old mechanical engineer who, like Bob Lazar, claims to have worked at Area 51. He started working there in the 1950s on a flying disc simulator built to train US pilots. He said he's been given permission to talk to us about certain specific aspects of his work, but asked us not to reveal his identity.
We received a disc from extraterrestrials. This particular one that I had to work on, or did work on, was from the Kingman crash. And that was later on taken to a Nevada test site where, at the time, I didn't know.
Were there any alien bodies recovered?
No bodies. There were 4 live, feeling good guys.
4 live extraterrestrials?
4 live, feeling good extraterrestrial type individuals, yes.
And where were those 4 extraterrestrials taken?
Initially, they were taken to New Mexico. And then several months later, they were taken to the Nevada site. One of the things I worked on was a flying disc simulator to train pilots to fly this strange-looking craft designed for humans to fly, not for any extraterrestrials to fly.
His most fantastical claim was that he worked at Area 51 with an alien codenamed J-Rod for 16 years on this simulator project.
J-Rod is a gray alien, about 5'4". His role was only as a translator, scientific translator. That was all. If we wanted to put something in the place of what they had, he had to agree with it. I would have a question, you know, and I would bring it up in my mind, just how I wanted to present it with him, and he'd already know that I had this question, and he would already have the answer for me. And if he responded, it would be in my voice. And you wouldn't even open your lips. It is possible that he and a few thousand others are working on the project, either here or elsewhere.
Is this a few thousand other greys?
Few thousand other greys like himself.
The nearest town to Area 51 is Rachel, population 150, and home to the most famous bar and grill in Nevada, the Little Alien. The local residents have seen their highway truck stop turned into the UFO and ET Center of America. Tourists flock to Rachel to scan the skies in the hope of having a sighting. For all the hype, the sightings of bizarre lights in the sky do continue. Local resident Chuck Clark has had many unexplainable sightings.
The most remarkable sighting that I've had in the last 3 years took place 2 years ago, February of '93. I watched a glowing object ascend vertically from the area south of Area 51, where S4 would be located, hang motionless in the air for about 10 minutes and then slowly start to descend. All of this while I thought I was watching a illumination flare that was launched from a mortar tube.
I can hear jets in the background. I'll zoom back a little bit. This is looking straight over Steve Medelin's ranch, right here off 375 highway. This is right over the peaks.
Once it got down to the ridge line, however, it was in front of the hill that it had come up from behind. The hill was about 12.5 miles from my position. It came down to a few feet above the ground at the base of the hill, hovered momentarily, which is still consistent with what a flare might do in calm air, but then suddenly it shot off westward, covered 4.8 miles in 1 to 1.5 seconds, and stopped cold, also about 30 feet off the ground, hovered just long enough for me to get it focused in my binoculars for maybe 2 seconds, and then it vanished right in place.
We've seen video of craft that were luminous, that would move across the sky as if it was skipping a stone across water, or sort of a sewing machine effect. What we see across the screen are a series of lights, of dashes of light, as the object moves from point A to point B. And a rather strange warping occurs that's very difficult to unravel until you go frame by frame and you begin to see what is actually occurring. Therefore, we are seeing what you might call a shadow effect of the propulsion mechanism at work.
I've spoken to several people who've seen UFOs or disc-shaped craft out there. An attorney who lives here in town who has seen one. He saw one land outside the boundaries of Area 51. I've spoken to a very high-level managerial type who worked for a defense contractor out there for a number of years, from a very respectable, reputable family. His credentials are beyond question, but he doesn't want his name or face used, and he has seen them many times.
There were a variety of craft that were all essentially generically sort of canister-shaped, I guess you would say. They were predominantly disc-shaped or rounded, like one of those Chinese lanterns or something or other. They appear to be colorful. At least they were multicolored in addition to the lights that seemed to be able to take on the light of the background. They could camouflage themselves somewhat in the sky by absorbing the blue light from the sky and the clouds.
What are these lights in the sky, and are they indeed flying saucers? We asked US Navy physicist and UFO expert Dr. Bruce Maccabee to examine the footage.
Basically what you see are lighted objects doing things way off in the distance. You don't really see any structured craft. Some of the video material, a very small amount that I've seen, seems to show lights doing strange things like hovering and then moving suddenly to another location, maybe, and moving slowly and jumping around a little bit. I've concluded that they aren't ours. That means they belong to somebody else, and they're not made here on Earth, basically, so they must be coming from the outside. How they get here, who, in quotes, they belong to, I don't know. Extraterrestrials is a reasonable proposal. All the arguments that have been put forth that it couldn't be people from another star system in the galaxy or whatever because they can't get here from there, those arguments are not physically correct, because we could get there given enough time and money and desire to do it. However, it's clear that these other intelligences, whatever they are far beyond us in terms of technologies. Now what I'm going to show you is a computer-enhanced version of what you just saw, and we're just going to look at the one portion where the UFO was appearing in the left-hand corner, going to the right, and then coming back again. That's all we're going to see. We're going to see it repeated over and over again. This part of the frame has been chopped out of the full frame. So I'll just let it run, and it goes back and forth, repeating. And if we stop it, and here's the shadow, and here's the UFO. So basically we have a triangle with one side and two angles that we know. The net result is I can calculate the UFO position in three-dimensional space.
Right.
Turns out to be about 7,000 feet away from the camera.
So having analysed it, what we seem to have here, Bruce, is a genuine UFO.
Yes, there is an object out there 7,000 feet away. It wasn't one of ours. It's about 30 feet in size. A genuine UFO.
The security at Area 51 is formidable. The entire perimeter is surrounded by motion detectors and cameras. Armed guards patrol in jeeps and helicopter gunships are deployed to warn off anyone who challenges the borders. We headed out deep into the desert over 80 miles outside Las Vegas. Traveling down the recently renamed extraterrestrial highway, we'd come to see America's most secret base for ourselves. The only approach to the base is a dusty 10-mile track called Groom Lake Road. Anyone approaching the border can clearly be seen for miles, and as we've been warned, our every move was being monitored by the security patrols and cameras on the hilltops. This is as far as you can come to go to the Groom Lake base. It actually says on these signs that use of deadly force is authorized. There are security patrols all over these hills. They've been watching us for the best part of the last hour. There are motion sensors, security cameras, and if I did walk over this line, I would be immediately arrested, taken to the guardhouse and interrogated for anything up to a week. As soon as you step over the line, past this sign, you lose all rights. What's amazing to me, Glenn, is that the entrance here is so unassuming. They've got this rickety sign saying use of deadly force authorised, but you literally could, if you didn't know what you were doing, you just carry on straight into the base.
That's the idea. You don't encounter any people here. If you went into the guardhouse that's there about a quarter mile in, you'd be arrested immediately because you've already passed those signs. They don't want to answer any questions, so they don't put any people in vulnerable positions.
And as you come off the highway up there, the extraterrestrial highway, there's no sign saying Groom Lake. There's nothing, is there?
No, I've put up a secret base sign up there occasionally. Secret base this way, but it doesn't stay up for very long.
And on foot or in car, this is as close as you can get to Groom Lake, isn't it?
This is physically as close as you can get. Unfortunately, you can't see anything from here at all.
How far are we actually away from the base?
We're about 13 miles northeast of the base right now.
Right. And if we continued up this road, if we drove into the base now past the signs, we'd be arrested?
If you drove beyond here 20 feet, you'd be intercepted.
As night fell and determined to see the secret facility, we headed for Tikaboo Peak, which overlooks the base 7,000 feet above the desert. At our base camp, I talked to Glenn Campbell, who founded the Area 51 Research Centre in Rachel and who produces the Groom Lake Desert Rat newsletter. He gave up a successful career in computers to devote his life to uncovering the truths of Dreamland.
This is a large facility as big as the state of Connecticut. It's got lots of unknown, unexplored areas that you could store anything you want. Area 51 is only the best known secret base of a vast complex. They could house a lot of different things we don't know about.
But there is actually no fencing, is there? Yet they know when you cross that line.
It's simply marked by orange posts every few hundred feet. It's easy to wander across this line, but as soon as you do, they're going to detect you and they'll be right on you. This is a very harsh military border. It's not a place for tourists. Military has never said there are no UFOs. It's never directly denied any of the Area 51 stories. It would have been so simple when these claims came out, these Papoose Lake claims, for the military to simply say, look, we have nothing there. They could take a few reporters to this area and show them, nothing there. The military hasn't done it. The military has stonewalled. It has remained silent. And that's the most damning thing that they can do.
At 3 a.m. we started our final ascent of Tikaboo. We needed to reach the summit before daybreak in order to see the base lit up for its nighttime test flights. Even at night, the roar of the jet shattered the silence of the desert. As we reached the summit under a cloak of darkness, Area 51 could clearly be seen, its runway lights glowing in the distance. After trekking for several hours, we finally set up camp here, some 7,000 feet up. And since the crack of dawn, we've been watching non-existent flights, ferrying non-existent personnel to this non-existent base. Tikaboo Peak is the last safe vantage point where you can clearly see Dreamland. But how long before this too is claimed by the military? The Groom Lake mystery continues. We've followed the personnel flights out of the secret base, and they've landed here at McCarran Airport, just outside Las Vegas. There are apparently over a dozen flights every day, ferrying the personnel in and out of America's most secret base.
I was called at a random time. The operator would say, "Mr. Lazar, it's now 4:15 a.m. We expect you to be at McCarran Airport at 4:45. Your plane will be leaving at such and such time." I'd drive there, check in, board the plane, and the plane would fly out to Groom Lake.
As the Groom Lake workers headed off in their cars, we tried to enter the terminal. Who could you point me to at the base who could give me some information?
Okay, what I want to tell you right now, you're trespassing on private property.
Sorry, we thought that was the point.
You're trespassing on private property. You're inside our gate. And I'm going to advise you right now to leave the premises immediately. Okay?
Is this government?
You're to do that immediately. This is private property. You're trespassing. Leave the premises as soon as I get to getting you information.
Is it government property or is it just private?
No comment. You're trespassing. Okay?
Who are you trying to kid, bud?
I just
You're
trying to
bullshitting me and quit it.
Is there anyone you can point us to give us any details on? As we were ejected from the airport, yet another Janet flight left for Groom Lake.
Reporting 737, wind calm, runway 1 and a left, Liberty Golf. 19 left, early left turn. Roger, early left turn to 150, fuel south of sunset. 31. Janet 3, Janet 605, cross runway 25 right, kind of ground point 1 on the other side, good day.
Our investigations have revealed that a private company is working with the US military at Area 51. We believe this is the company, EG&G Special Projects. It's worked for the last 50 years on top secret and sensitive projects with the US government, and it's said to control the Janet flights that take the workers to the base, as well as all the security and technical support for the back engineering of alien spacecraft.
I did not work for EG&G directly. I was just interviewed in one of their facilities at McCarran Airport. A short time later, I was called back in for this new job at S4, and they had explained to me that it dealt with some sort of field propulsion system, and I was just under the assumption that this is an advanced type of aircraft that's being worked on, and I was excited about the position.
You have to leave the private property.
Okay.
So they actually cut your camera off and please leave.
Does it have any connection with the Groom Lake base?
I'm asking you to leave the property.
Does this company have any connection with the flights that leave McCarran?
EG&G has been the central civilian contractor for Groom Lake basically since the beginning. They're the people who military folks come and go, other contractors come and go. EG&G has had the contract since the very beginning. So if anyone were to know what's going on out there, it'd be EG&G. They're not talking.
We phoned EG&G to clarify what their role is at the base, but they would only confirm that the company is working on several classified Department of Defense contracts at various remote locations in Nevada. They would not comment on the exact nature of the work, but did state that it was connected with EMP, electromagnetic propulsion. If recovered alien craft are buried deep beneath the Nevada desert, then the power to release this information to the public lies deep inside the corridors of Washington. As an intelligence insider said to me, the problem isn't obtaining the information, it's handling the truth. Are these alien craft above Groom Lake, or are they man-made? Have the US military developed the technology to build flying discs? Join us next time on Dreamland.
There's a great deal of legitimacy to this UFO phenomenon, to the issue of alien intelligence. This is something that's not at all new to the US military.
There's programs that they're working on today that are 50 years ahead of anything that you and I could even conceive of.
The black project teams are operating without oversight from official committees from Congress, if you will. I find that exceedingly distressing, frightening, the ultimate big brother scenario.
Everything is being run by the ETs. They're so far beyond us in terms of technology that I don't think we would have a chance.
I don't think we've yet scratched the surface on what's happening out there with regard to flying saucers.
There are a variety of activities, some of which are classified throughout what is often called the Air Force's Nellis Range Complex. The range is used for the testing of technologies and systems and training for operations critical to the effectiveness of U.S. military forces and the security of the United States. There is an operating location near Groom Dry Lake. Some specific activities and operations conducted on the Nellis Range, both past and present, remain classified and cannot be discussed.